I just got back from my first time at NAB, and if you like cameras, this is like Disneyland. In this video, I'm gonna go over some of my favorite products that I saw during the week, and then some tips if you plan on going in the future. I went with the intention to find my next cinema camera, but I found a lot more than that. Something that surprised me was some of the products that were my favorite were from companies that weren't even on my radar. The first thing that I did whenever I got there day one was go to the Sony booth. I had a meeting with one of the reps there, and we talked about some of the new cameras, some of the new accessories, and the new firmwares that are coming out. So we walked through the version 2.0 of the Burano firmware, and we talked through some of the benefits, some of the new added features. My favorite thing is that they're adding the full frame 3.8 crop mode, which is like a 5% crop or something. So you're really taking advantage of that full sensor and get that full frame look. The Burano is an interesting choice because it doesn't allow me to have open gate necessarily because of the way that the ND is, but what it does allow me to do is keep my Sony ecosystem, so I can use my FX3 as a gimbal camera and then go to the Burano for my A camera, and then it allows me to shoot the entire sensor without having to shoot 8.6K. But something that is hesitating me on that camera is the price point. At $25,000 and really $30,000 when you're into the full system, it's quite the investment. Another thing that I found at the Sony booth that I thought was really interesting was the Sony FP1. Essentially, it's their Sony Xperia phone that they've modified. They put passive cooling on it, and they've basically made it a dedicated monitor and control app. It used to really be aimed at live productions, but they're kind of switching the model up a little bit, and they're opening it to different camera types. And it's something that I thought would be really handy to have with the FX6, FX3, or Burano. It comes in at like $1,000, and for that price, it's a good screen and a good interface, so it's something that I want to keep an eye on and maybe even try out sometime. One of the other places I went to was Blackmagic, and it was a huge booth. It's probably the biggest booth there by far. They had a station for Resolve, they had a station for audio, they had a station for cameras, they had a station for film, they had a station for every product that they had. And at each station, they were very well staffed with a bunch of different experts on different topics. What was really cool is I got to talk to somebody in depth for like 30 minutes. He took so much time out of his day and explained a lot about the Blackmagic company, a lot about the new cameras, the new sensors, etc. And it really made me even more interested in the Pixus 12K because the amount of time that they spend developing these sensors, developing these companies, acquiring companies to bring in to make better products is really impressive. Now, something that I've seen a lot of people say about Blackmagic is if you buy a Blackmagic, expect to sell it for half price next year or even more because they cannibalize their own market. Blackmagic is notorious for big product releases every year, but I brought this up to them, and as they mentioned, they're good at supporting new features on some of their old products. Before I left for NAB, I talked about how I loved the 12K sensor that's in the Ursa Cine, but I didn't necessarily love the body. Now, Blackmagic kind of fixed that with the Pixus 12K. The readout speeds are essentially half of what they are the Ursa Cine, and that's a processor limitation based on what Blackmagic has told me. But that brings me back to my next cinema camera purchase. Am I going to go with something like the Blackmagic 12K because I love this sensor? It gives me open gate, it gives me the ability to shoot the full sensor at different resolutions, but what it doesn't give me is the internal ND. Now that may be something that's worth a sacrifice because of the price that you're paying for the camera. Right now, at the time of filming this video, the camera is priced at $5,495 in the US. And at that price, by the time you buy all of the accessories and media and everything, you're essentially a quarter of what it would cost to get into a Burano system. But what you do lose is the interchangeability in the ecosystem between the Burano, the FX3, and the FX6. Now, one thing that Blackmagic told me, and it really resonated, was they acquire different companies and they bring them in and they integrate them into their systems as well as they can. So whenever they got the 12K sensor, they brought that, and essentially the way they explained it was, if we could have DaVinci Resolve Color Science go out and shoot something, this is the sensor that we would have it shoot. Overall, I was really impressed with how well staffed and knowledgeable the Blackmagic booth was. They had experts for everything, and so if I had a question about cameras, I would be taken to somebody. If I had a question about post-production, I'd be taken to the Resolve booth. So I ended up actually talking to like 3 or 4 different experts while I was there. It was really cool walking through the different booths because there were so many different companies that I didn't even realize existed, or maybe they weren't quite on my radar in the way that they should be. One of those companies was PGY Tech. I had seen some of their stuff passing through on Amazon or different gear pages, but I had never really taken the time to take a deep dive into the company. I got to see their booth, and honestly, I was really impressed with what they were producing. They have these card readers that they hold the cards like a card case, but then also it can read it at the same time, and you can plug it straight into your computer. And they had this phone grip that magnetized on, and then you could take it off, and you could do selfies and stuff like that. And it may not be necessarily aimed towards me, but I could recognize the production quality and the design that went into it, and I was really impressed. But then they had these backpacks, and their backpacks were outstanding. They used YKK zippers, they had aluminum frames on the inside, and it's just a company that was surprising to me because I had never really spent much time looking into them, but after walking away from their booth, I was thinking to myself, man, I really got to get in contact with them. I really need to order something from them because that was a really cool find. I was also able to swing by the Small Rig booth and meet some new people there. They have a new battery coming out that's a really rugged battery that seems really cool, and in fact the display case just had it running in water, which really showed off like the strength of it and the water rating and everything like that. Their new battery is touchscreen on the back, and you can select power, distro, and stuff like that. They also have some new lights coming out and some updates to the Tribex tripod. I also got to swing by the Hollyland booth. Over the years, they've earned my trust, and now subconsciously, I relate their name to quality and reliability. One of the cool things that they're dropping is one of their new lavalier systems. It's got a built-in 32-bit float recorder backup. It can go directly into the Sony Michu, and then it's got these wireless monitors that connect directly to the receiver. That way you don't have to plug anything additional into your camera. Kinefinity is definitely not off of my list completely yet. That's a camera that I'm considering, and it may be a good fit for what I need. They've got a camera that's out that can go to E, PL, EF, whatever. It's got internal NDs, it's got a 3x2 sensor, it can shoot 8K. So that's a camera that's kind of also on my radar. I owned a Kinefinity Mavo L2 in the past, and I love the color science, but sometimes I would have some issues with the highlight. I've heard mixed reviews on their customer support in the US, and so that's a camera that's on my radar, but I was a little bit hesitant. But I wanted to swing by their booth and talk to them about the camera. Another company that I found was a company called Ugreen, and they're primarily known for their chargers and electronics, but something that they've come out with recently is a new RAID system. And I got to spend some time talking with them, and in the way that they've created this app that makes a RAID system so user-friendly, seems like it'll be a really good fit for the industry. It makes it really easy. It's got some AI tools in there with like facial recognition and stuff like that, but you've also got the ability to like right click on a folder and you can share it directly to your client or whatever. You create them a password and a login, they're able to download that footage. So rather than having to host everything on Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, you can put it on your own NAS system and then send your client a link and they're able to download from that. Somehow I've gotten through my career without having a NAS system yet, but I really want to get into that, and that may be the one that ticks the box because it seems like it's a user-friendly, easy way to get into a NAS system without having to be an expert in network storage. Another company that I was surprised with is a company called GVM. GVM stands for Great Video Maker, and at the very beginning I remember them being known for extremely economical things like sliders and some cheaper lights, but they've started to produce some higher end options. They have some small lights that are like little 60-watt pocket lights that seem really cool, but then they also have these giant 1200 fixtures that are really robust and really well made. And that's something that if I had just seen them on Amazon, I would expect like a lower quality or something just because of the price or the name. But seeing them in person, I was really impressed. They had a higher quality than I expected, and that's something that you can't really get a feel for if you're just looking at the pictures or the reviews on Amazon. I was also able to swing by the Fujifilm booth and get eyes on the new GFX Eterna. Now, for the first time, they had the side gate open, and that revealed a battery, an SD card slot, and a CF Express Type B slot. Now, the rep told me that the battery is the same battery that's in the GFX 100, and essentially what that does is that allows you to hot swap without having to power down the camera. They were not able to confirm any codecs, any sensor readout times, or anything like that, so we're kind of left in the dark on that. So then another company, Bosma, was releasing a new camera as well as some cinema lenses. The cinema lenses looked pretty interesting. They were fast. They had a really pretty design to them. It's a really interesting trend right now. A lot of new cinema lenses are coming out in this space, and so I'm interested to see if we're going to have like a huge oversaturation of lenses coming soon. I traveled out to NAB with a director buddy of mine, Steve Jones, and at the end of the conference, Sony invited Steve and myself to a pretty exclusive camera test that was done at Meow Wolf, which it was an honor to be part of, and it was actually pretty cool. Meow Wolf was a really interesting place to be at. We got to go to their market. Omega Mart, and then we were also got to free roam Meow Wolf with the cameras. So they had the Venice 2, the FX3, the Burano, the Venice 2 with the Rialto, the new Rialto system, as well as the FX6. And it was a really cool event because it gave us the ability to test the cameras in their low light, as well as just kind of get a feel for the cameras in a really unique working environment. So really appreciate Sony inviting us out to that. That was an honor, and it was really, really cool to be a part of that. So practically, if you're going to NAB, what I would suggest is that you show up a day early and you get checked in. Check-in can be pretty hectic, especially on the morning that the event opens. There's like 60,000 people that attend this thing. So if you're able to show up a day early and get checked in, that way you can get your badge and then you can get a lay of the land and figure out how the buildings are organized and get an idea for how you want to plan your days while you're there at NAB. And if you plan on traveling around Vegas, I would suggest that you get the ticket to the monorail. The monorail is really cool. It's a great way to end up traveling around the city. Another tip that I would say if you plan on going to NAB is going there with intentionality. If you have a company that you want to work with or you have their products and you need a good contact for support, that's a good way to get a personal contact at a company that you're not necessarily going to be able to find on the internet. It's not a general contact us at whatever.com. You're able to get a handshake meeting with somebody and really connect with somebody that's there at the company. That way you have an advocate in your corner. That's basically a brain dump of what I saw in my first 2 days and my first time at NAB. I'm sharing what I've learned and what I'm learning along the way. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. This is just the beginning of the conversation.